The darkness came without warning. It started in the northern villages, where farmers woke to find their crops turned black and their livestock frozen in place. Within 3 days, the shadow had spread across half the kingdom of Aldris, and the alien observers watching from orbit began to panic. Commander Zorath of the Veluxi Empire pressed his scaled hands against the observation deck window. His yellow eyes reflected the blue planet below, where humanity's newest colony world was being consumed by something his species had hoped was just a legend. "The Void Plague," whispered his science officer, Kira 7. Her thin fingers moved across holographic displays that showed the spreading darkness like a cancer across the land. "We thought the Ancient Ones had destroyed it 10,000 years ago." Zorath turned away from the window. His people had watched humans for 200 years now. They had seen them arrive on this world called New Europa with nothing but basic supplies and stubborn determination. The Veluxi had expected them to fail. Every other species that tried to colonize planets in this sector had been driven away by harsh conditions or strange phenomena. But humans had stayed. They had built villages that became towns, towns that became cities, and cities that became kingdoms, complete with their own fuel systems and cultures adapted to this new world. "How long until it reaches the capital?" Zorath asked. "At current speed, perhaps 5 days. Maybe less." Down on the surface, Queen Eleanor stood on the balcony of her stone castle and watched the horizon. The darkness there was not the pleasant darkness of night. It was something else, something alive and hungry. She could feel it calling to her, whispering promises of power and eternal peace if she would just surrender. She turned away and walked back into the war room, where her advisors and generals waited with grim faces. "Your Majesty," said General Marcus, a man whose gray beard could not hide the fear in his eyes. "The eastern garrison has fallen. No survivors. The scouts say the people there are not dead. They are standing in the fields like statues, their eyes completely black." Eleanor sat down in her throne at the head of the table. She was 43 years old, had ruled for 15 years, and had never faced anything like this. The curse, as her people called it, had appeared from an ancient ruin that a group of explorers had unsealed against all warnings. Now it was spreading, and nothing seemed to stop it. "What about fire?" she asked. "It does not burn," replied her court physician, a woman named Sarah, who had spent her life studying both medicine and the strange artifacts left behind on this world. "It does not respond to heat, cold, water, or any weapon we possess. I have examined one of the affected people. They are alive, but their minds are gone. Something else controls them now." Eleanor closed her eyes. In that moment, she thought about Earth. She had never been there. Her grandparents had made the journey across the stars to settle this world. But she had heard the stories. Stories about a planet that humans had nearly destroyed and then rebuilt. Stories about wars that killed millions and plagues that killed billions. And always the same ending. Humanity survived. She opened her eyes and looked at her advisors. "Send riders to every village and city still free of the curse. Tell them to gather at the capital. Every person who can hold a weapon, every scholar who has studied the ancient ruins, every farmer and blacksmith and child. We make our stand here." General Marcus leaned forward. "With respect, Your Majesty, if the curse cannot be stopped by weapons, what good will gathering our people do? We will only give it more victims." Eleanor stood up. "Because we are human, General. And humans do not run from things they do not understand. We study them. We learn their weaknesses. And we break them. In orbit, the Veluxi recorded everything. Their ships were cloaked, invisible to human detection technology. They had been observing this colony for decades, collecting data on human behavior and adaptation. But none of them had ever seen anything like what happened next. Over the following 3 days, thousands of humans fled to the capital city of New Vienna. They came on horses, in carts, and on foot. They brought their children, their animals, and whatever tools they could carry. The roads were rivers of people, all moving toward the one place they believed they might find safety. But they did not come to hide. They came to work. Sarah, the physician, set up a research station in the castle basement. She gathered every scholar, healer, and scientist in the kingdom. Together, they began to study the curse with everything they had. They examined the possessed villagers who had been captured and restrained. They analyzed samples of the blackened crops. They read every ancient text and inscription that had been recovered from the ruins over the past century. Meanwhile, Eleanor organized the defense. She did not know if weapons could stop the curse itself, but she knew they could slow down the possessed people it controlled. Walls were reinforced. Trenches were dug. Every able-bodied person was given a task, from sharpening swords to preparing food for the defenders. Commander Zoroth watched from above, his confusion growing by the hour. "They know they cannot win," he said to his crew. "Their weapons are useless against the Void Plague. We have seen it consume entire civilizations, species far more advanced than humans. Why do they not flee to their other worlds?" His communications officer, a young Veluxi named Talon, looked up from his station. "Commander, I have intercepted their transmissions. The Queen has sent messages to other human colonies, but not for rescue. She is asking for information, research data, historical records about similar phenomena. They are trying to find a weakness," Kira 7 said slowly. "They actually believe they can defeat something that destroyed the Varix Empire." Zoroth shook his head. The Varix had been the most powerful civilization in this galaxy before the Void Plague had appeared from the darkness between stars. They had possessed technology that could reshape planets and harness the energy of suns. And they had fallen in less than a single generation. Every member of their species transformed into mindless servants of the darkness. "Humans are remarkable," he admitted. "But this time, their stubbornness will only lead to extinction." On the fourth day, the darkness reached the walls of New Vienna. The possessed came first. Thousands of them, walking in perfect formation, their black eyes reflecting nothing. They did not speak, did not show any emotion. They simply moved forward, climbing over the trenches and pressing against the walls while arrows and stones rained down on them. Behind them came the darkness itself. It rolled across the land like fog, but thicker, alive with whispers that promised peace to anyone who stopped fighting. Queen Eleanor stood on the wall, sword in hand, watching her people die. For every possessed villager they struck down, 10 more took their place. The darkness was reaching over the walls now, tendrils of shadow grabbing at the defenders and pulling them into its embrace. "Your Majesty," a young soldier shouted, running toward her. "The physicians. They say they have found something." Eleanor turned and ran. She sprinted through the castle, downstairs and through corridors, until she reached the basement laboratory where Sarah and her team were working. "What is it?" Eleanor demanded. Sarah looked up with exhausted eyes. She had not slept in 3 days. None of them had. "The curse is not magic, Your Majesty. It is a weapon. A very old, very sophisticated weapon designed to convert organic matter into a network." "A network for what?" "Communication. Control. The darkness is not trying to kill us. It is trying to connect us. To add our minds to something vast and ancient. Something that has been sleeping beneath this world for millions of years." Eleanor felt her blood turn cold. "How do we stop it?" Sarah smiled. It was a strange, fierce smile that had no business being on the face of a woman watching the end of her world. "We break the connection. The weapon needs to maintain contact with its source, the original point of awakening in the northern ruins. If we can sever that connection, the network will collapse." "How?" "Electricity." The ancient text described the weapon as sensitive to strong electromagnetic fields. If we can generate enough power at the source point, we can overload the connection and destroy the weapon entirely. General Marcus, who had followed Eleanor, stepped forward. "The northern ruins are surrounded by possessed. We would need an army to reach them, and our army is here, fighting for its life. Eleanor looked at Sarah. How much power are we talking about? A massive amount, more than anything we possess. We would need, Sarah paused, thinking. We would need a lightning storm. A direct strike on the ruins, channeled through a conductor. In orbit, Commander Zorath listened to the intercepted transmission and felt something he had not felt in centuries. Surprise. They cannot be serious, he said. They want to create an artificial lightning strike with their primitive technology? Kira Seven was already running calculations. It is theoretically possible. If they could gather enough conductive material and place it correctly, they might be able to attract a natural lightning strike during the approaching storm front. But the timing would need to be perfect, and someone would need to be at the ruins to set up the conductor. A suicide mission, Talon said quietly. Zorath nodded. Volunteers will die, and there is no guarantee it will work. The logical choice would be evacuation. But even as he said it, he knew humans would not make the logical choice. They never did. Queen Eleanor asked for volunteers. She did not order anyone. She simply explained the plan and asked who would go. 57 people stepped forward. Farmers, soldiers, scholars, young and old. They knew they would not return. The journey to the northern ruins would take them through the heart of the possessed territory, and even if they reached their destination, the lightning strike would kill anyone nearby. Among the volunteers was General Marcus. My queen, he said, kneeling before Eleanor. I have served your family for 40 years. Let my last service be the one that matters most. Eleanor placed her hand on his shoulder. Go with honor, old friend. The volunteers left at sunset, moving fast through the shadows while the main army held the walls. Commander Zorath tracked their progress on his displays, watching the tiny dots of human heat signatures moving through the endless ranks of possessed. They lost 12 people in the first hour, 8 more in the second. By the time they reached the ruins, only 19 remained, including General Marcus. The storm arrived as they began their work. Thunder rolled across the sky, and rain fell in sheets. The survivors worked frantically, assembling the conductor from metal and wire, planting it deep in the heart of the ancient chamber where the weapon had awakened. The possessed closed in around them. There was no way out now. Marcus looked at his remaining companions and nodded. It has been an honor, he said. The lightning struck. In orbit, every sensor on the Veluxy ship screamed warnings. The electromagnetic pulse was massive, far larger than anything they had predicted. It raced outward from the ruins in a wave of energy that disrupted communications and fried sensitive equipment. And then, silence. Kira Seven stared at her displays in disbelief. The darkness is receding. The network is collapsing. The weapon is destroyed. Commander Zorath watched as the shadow pulled back from the walls of New Vienna, dissolving into nothing. The possessed collapsed where they stood, freed from the control that had stolen their minds. Many were injured, confused, traumatized. But they were alive. 19 humans, Zorath said softly. 19 humans just destroyed a weapon that brought down an empire. He turned to his crew. This is what they do. This is what they have always done. They do not run. They do not surrender. They find a way to win, no matter the cost. Down on the surface, Queen Eleanor stood on her balcony as the sun rose over a wounded but surviving kingdom. She thought about General Marcus and the 18 others who had given their lives. Their names would be carved in stone. Their stories would be told for generations. Humanity had faced an ancient horror and emerged victorious. Not through superior technology or magic, but through courage, sacrifice, and the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. In orbit, the Veluxy began preparing their report. The other races of the galaxy needed to know what they had witnessed here. They needed to understand that humans were not just another species struggling to survive in a hostile universe. They were something more, something that even the darkness could not consume. And that made them the most dangerous and wonderful species the galaxy had ever seen.